What's up, Occupy Fantasy family? Here on a Saturday morning with Chuck Silver and Brandon Smith. I'm going to talk over some NFL preseason. We have 4 games on the main slate today, and so we're just going to go game by game and try to sort out the best plays. So let's just go ahead and jump in. Brandon, any quick thoughts before we jump into the slate?
No, it looks like a pretty good slate. We have a lot of Chargers that are going to be in our lineups, and a few guys from Philly that look pretty good, especially the running backs. So.
Yeah, it looks like Chargers are the guys we probably have the most confidence in playing because they don't have that many receivers and they're not really going to play their starters today. Where the other teams, some of them that are playing their starters, they still have a lot of guys on the depth chart who are probably going to see snaps. And so the goal is just to find guys who are going to be on the field. And for our high risk guys, we want to find guys who have the ability to make big plays. So let's jump into the first game, Jets versus Carolina. We already saw the Jets play in the Hall of Fame game last week, so we have an idea of what they want to do. But the big thing is they only played 3 running backs, so it's possible that we see Bam Knight or Michael Carter tonight. We'll have to look out for news before the first game starts. It's in about 2 hours, so we should have that news before then. As for quarterbacks, for the Jets, we're just expecting Zach Wilson and Boyle to basically split the time. They'll probably get about a half each. Let's see here. Yep. And then as for the rest of the starters, Robert Saleh said that we'll see if they end up playing. So just watch the news. If the starters are out, then we can get to these guys with a little bit more confidence. But because it's the first game, I think we do want to be careful with how many of our roster spots we take up because there's going to be some really good late swap opportunities later. I mentioned the Chargers are one of the teams that we want to target today, and they are in the last game. So if you put Chargers in your lineup, that leaves you with a lot of flexibility to swap off if we get some late news on some of the other teams. Let's see here. And so for the Jets, the receivers that we're most interested in, we saw Jason Brownlee and Malik Taylor do all right in the Hall of Fame game. They saw the most snaps. You'll remember Malik Taylor had that 57-yard catch. And we are expected to see both of those get most of them. And we think they're both good plays tonight. Smitty, anything else on these receivers?
No, I do like the report on Brownlee and Malik Taylor. We got a report that they should see the bulk of the snaps at wideout. So I think them two are who you want to focus on, at least at receiver for the Jets.
So receiver, we like those two. And like I mentioned, at running back, the majority of the work went to the rookie Abanaconda and Dye. And then Crockett got a few snaps, but he did get hurt. And so that probably wasn't the plan for those two to get most of the snaps. Just look out for if Michael Carter and Bam Knight are playing today because that'll just muddy up the rotation a little bit. Looking at the Panthers, so Frank Reich said that he wants to play the offense or the starters, I guess, as much as possible, just because it's a new team. They're not that comfortable playing with each other yet. They don't have any games together, most of these guys. And so Bryce Young is going to start today. It's not clear if we're going to see a full half or maybe just the first quarter, go a little bit into the second quarter. But they did mention, excuse me, that they really want to get reps for Matt Corral, who last season, he was a rookie, had a season-ending injury in the preseason. And so I think that's the guy that we're most interested in playing from this Panthers team. He has some rushing upside, and assuming that he gets the bulk of the run after Bryce Young comes out of the game, it could be as much as 3 quarters. They did sign another quarterback. I think his name is Jake Luton, but I don't think he's part of the plan. They still have Andy Dalton over there, but he's not expected to play. He's the only starter that Frank Reich specifically mentioned wouldn't play. So Corral is one of my picks for a good high-risk quarterback. Smitty, anything on those guys?
I think Corral's pretty interesting, just given the history of how they run it. The QB1's 29%. QB2 normally gets about a little over a quarter, and then QB3, which would be Corral, should get around 36% of the snaps if trends hold.
Yep. And so, like, Bryce Young's interesting because he's starting. He was the number 1 pick in the draft. He's going to play with his starters. The top receivers are expected to play Shark, Thielen, and Mingo. It's possible those guys, maybe not Thielen, but Mingo, I would probably expect to get a few snaps with Matt Corral. So I think that's the wide receiver that I'm most interested in from this team. Beyond that, they still have Terrace Marshall, who's been running with the twos in camp. It was interesting to me that, pull this up here. They have the 3 first-team wide receivers: DJ Shark, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo. I thought it was interesting that Mingo was listed ahead of Terrace Marshall on the depth chart. There's been a lot of hype around Terrace Marshall that he could be their X receiver, etc. And so that'll be interesting. But he's probably one of the top targets to pair with Matt Corral if you're going to go that route. And then they also have Laviska Shenault on the roster, who is the other second-team receiver. He's out with an injury. Same with Demir Bird. And so beyond that, we're looking at a few guys. Derek Wright, Javon Wims, Josh Van are guys who all made plays in practice. And Gary Jennings did okay in the XFL. He had 11 total catches, 149 yards, 3 touchdowns. All it tells me is that he is a guy who can be capable of big plays. He's had a few highlights. You can see the videos on Twitter with that. But those are the guys that I'd be pretty interested in. And last season in the preseason, week 1, Frank Reich did play 2 wide receivers over 44% of the snaps, the rookie Alec Pierce and one of the second unit guys. So the players that we're confident could be in that role today: Jonathan Mingo, Terrace Marshall Jr., Derek Wright, Javon Wims, and then Shai Smith is also over here. He's been running with the twos in practice. He's another guy that we can throw in with Corral if we want to take a high-risk shot there. As for the running backs on Carolina, so Miles Sanders tweaked his groin. He's probably not going to play. And last season, so this kind of similar to the Panthers in preseason week 1. I know it's a little different situation, but Christian McCaffrey set out, and Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman, they kind of just switched off every series in the first half, with Spencer Brown, who's still on the roster here. And then they had a 5th running back who got a quarter each in the second half. The reports from training camp say that Chuba Hubbard was splitting snaps with Miles Sanders in practice. So we're expecting Chuba Hubbard to be the likely starter today. The other running back who is getting attention on the Panthers is Raheem Blackshear. He's their pass catching back. He probably has more of a big play ability than Chuba Hubbard. Just, catch one pass and it's already a pretty good fantasy score for not one pass, but every pass he catches is really good for DraftKings with the full PPR here. And so Blackshear is a guy that I'm interested in, but we don't know what the snap counts are going to look like. And then their other running back here, Spencer Brown, he was on the roster last year. He saw 9 total carries in the season, but he did see action in preseason. He had at least a touchdown last preseason. So I'm not sure that we want to get there. I think the 2 guys that we're interested in here are Chuba Hubbard and Blackshear. Chuba Hubbard is going to be the priority. And those are the only running backs on the roster that are available. They only have 3. And so C. Peoples was helped off the field 2 weeks ago. I didn't see any updates since then. So see if maybe he's dressed for game day or not. If he's not, then I guess it's a light backfield: Hubbard, Blackshear, and Brown. And so I think we want to target at least one of these guys. What do you think, Smitty?
Yeah, I like that. Hubbard, I think they'll want to see him with Bryce Young. And then they're also, they only have 3 running backs, so they're going to have to run him. He's a do-it-all. He caught a lot of passes last year. And then Blackshear, for his pass catching ability, I think he's a really good high-risk play too.
Yeah, I think that Blackshear and Hubbard look good to me. I'll have to see how it looks closer to lock. And then at the tight end position, we have Hayden Hurst as the starter. They didn't say anything about sitting him, even though he's a veteran, so I'd expect him to play as they get comfortable with this offense. Some of the other tight ends on the roster are Tremble, Thomas, and Sullivan. So they have Ian Thomas listed as the second tight end I guess if they're running 2 tight end sets. And so we can probably mix these guys up, but they're not exactly the priority at tight end today, I think. What do you think?
I do think Tommy Trimble's a pretty good high risk tight end. We've seen his ability before. He's pretty good in the red zone, so I think taking a shot on him is probably all right, but not a priority.
I don't hate it. So moving on to the Jaguars game. So the starters are expected to play at least a few series. That includes Trevor Lawrence, Christian Kirk. I believe we're expecting Calvin Ridley to play, but we'll have to see a confirmation since he did have that toe injury a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if he's been practicing since. But those receivers, probably Zay Jones. I mean, we're going to see everybody on this team. And so, yeah, Smitty, any insights into these guys?
I do like Kevin Austin some. I was trying to look at it real quick. Kevin Austin's a name that stands out to me out of the people that are competing for roster spots.
Mm-hmm.
He's a pretty good receiver.
Yeah, we'll have to see just how it depends how many series. Hopefully that they give us something. I mean, they say at least a few series. To me, a few is 3. And so if we get more than a quarter from the starters, then they could be viable. Just takes one touchdown to get an optimal lineup. And so I guess we're expecting Trevor Lawrence to play, just like I said, a quarter to a quarter and a half. And then we have the 2 backup quarterbacks, Baytard and Rourke, who probably see quarter each. They'll just split the rest of the time. As for running backs, so it seems like Tank Bigsby is very clearly the backup running back. He's the RB2 on this team. In week 1 of last year, in preseason week 1, Travis Etienne played 30% of the snaps. And so I'd expect him to be on the field as long as Trevor Lawrence is. They played 4 total last season in preseason week 1, but I think the guys that we're going to be most interested in are Etienne and then Bigsby. Beyond that, they're going to have a couple more guys in play. I believe they have Jermichael Hasty on the roster, but yeah, we'll have to see how that looks a little bit later. But who are you getting too many guys from this team?
Not really. I think Bigsby's interesting. They're going to want to give him the ball and kind of showcase him a little bit. So I think he's pretty good for high risk, but I think we have running backs that are in better situations for low risk.
I agree with that. These guys are just high risk, the receivers too. And it does look like Calvin Ridley's expected to make his Jaguars debut today. So it's tough to I don't know if I'm gonna get to the excuse me, those Jaguars receivers that often the starters anyway. But if we think they could get, a quarter and a half, that might be enough for one of them to have the opportunity to rip one off. So
I mean, likely one of them catches a touchdown, but you just don't know who.
Right, that's all we're hoping for. And then as for Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, I mean, he has some rushing upside, and if he gets that quarter and a half, so with quarterback, like if we're expecting someone to get up to 2 quarters today, get a full half, that seems pretty good to me. And Trevor Lawrence is one of the better quarterbacks playing today, probably the best. So he's a high risk option. I'm not going to super prioritize him, but I am interested. And then as for tight end, they have Evan Engram. If the starters play, which they are, he's going to be in there. Behind Evan Engram, I believe Garrett Prince has been the second team tight end. Do you have anything more on that, Smitty?
No, you were talking about Lawrence. I know last year they played their QB1 34% of the snaps, and they only have 3 again this year. So if they do follow those trends and we're getting a, say, quarter and a half from Trevor Lawrence, I think that's pretty solid for high risk.
Yeah, I don't mind that. Trevor Lawrence and pairing him up with Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk maybe seems like a pretty good tournament play. You can get Evan Engram in there. Tight end, if we get any fantasy points from our tight end today, then I think we're pretty happy with that.
I do like Engram.
Looking at the other side of this game, Dallas Cowboys. 1 second, sorry. So they're not playing Dak today. And so we're going to be looking at the backup QBs. Those are Cooper Rush and Greer. Will Greer. We are expecting each about to play a half. That's what happened in 2022. They each got about 40% of the snaps. And I'm sorry, Cooper Rush got about 60% of the snaps, and their third stringer, DiNucci, last season got 43. So with Cooper Rush starting, I would just expect them each to play a half. As for the running backs here, Tony Pollard is not playing today. So they have 5 available running backs on the roster. In preseason week 1 last year, only 3 played, and none of them saw even half of the team snaps. The highest was a 39% snap share. The player who I've been hearing stuff about out of camp is Deuce Vaughn, player to keep an eye on. So I'm sure they'll try to get him into some action today. Have you seen anything else on the running backs from Dallas?
I didn't. I did see they want to get Deuce Vaughn and Malik Davis. I think they just want to get them to work, and Ronald Jones is supposed to be out. So I think Deuce Vaughn and Malik Davis are where you want to look at running back for Dallas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're gonna have Deuce Vaughn listed as a high risk play in the plug. I think he's a great high risk play. I think you should play him, mix him into your lineups, I guess, and hope that they let him run and he rips one off. As for their receivers, though, Dallas, let me just pull this up. Sorry. So in preseason week 1 last year, the 7 receivers saw snaps, and no one saw over a 50% snap share. Those included 2 guys still on the roster today, Fehoko and Jalen Tobear, who was the rookie last season. The players who we're thinking could be in this situation this season, Brooks, Houston, Drummond. Houston has been getting reps with both Rush and Greer during camp, and so we don't mind pairing him up. I think we have Greer as one of our high-risk plays today over Cooper Rush. And so who else would you pair up with Greer?
I really like Jalen Brooks. I think, let me see. Yeah, he's reported by multiple beats that he's been a standout. I know he's been a deep threat there, so I think he's one of those high-risk receivers that could pop off a big play.
And in preseason, that's all I'm looking for. If one of these guys is capable of catching even just a 30-yard touchdown, most of the time, especially on a 4-game slate, it's going to be enough to land in the winning lineup. And so just getting that guy right is pretty important.
Yep.
Another guy on the roster, Kevontae Turpin. Apparently, he's been getting some reps at the running back position during camp. So I'm not sure if we're going to have any info on that we can really use before the game, but just keep in mind that it's possible he does, maybe he gets a couple carries, but we're still going to be interested in Deuce Vaughn and possibly Malik Davis. So.
Yeah, I think Turpin's one of those guys that we talk about big plays, and he can rip one off. And I don't know if he'll do the kick returns here, but he's normally their kick returner or punt returner, and he could always take one.
Yeah, so we're interested in a couple of these guys. We don't mind it. And at tight end, they played 4 last preseason. We're expecting Jake Ferguson to be the starter. We'll have to see if he plays today. Since the other starters are sitting, I'm not sure, but he's a young guy, so he's not quite a veteran yet. We'll see if he plays a few snaps. But Luke Schumacher is one of the guys that we want to look out for today. They want to see what they have with him, so he could get some reps today. Him and Hendershot are probably going to be battling for that backup tight end position. And so if I was going to play a tight end from this game, it would probably be one of those 2. Just double check. Yep. And moving on to Philly and Baltimore. Now, Baltimore, it's like the best preseason just sports team of all time. I think they're like 26-0 since 2015 or something ridiculous like that. And so it'll be pretty interesting to see how this game turns out. But let's start with the Eagles first. And Jalen Hurts is not playing today. Actually, I take that back. Hurts is expected. So Sirianni's being weird about who he plans to play today, but last year, Jalen Hurts and the other starters did play a little bit in the preseason. Apparently, the beats expect the opposite. Do you have any more insight into that one?
No, I don't. I think you could probably see one series if they do play, and they probably score a touchdown, and then they're done. That's kind of what I think.
That's kind of what happened last season. Jalen
Yep.
Hurts played 8 snaps, and then Gardner Minshew came in for 40% of the snaps, and Sinet played the last 49% of the game. And so today, the candidates for that would be Marcus Mariota. He looks like he's going to be the QB2 on this roster. Still check. Oh, yeah. And so we don't know who's going to come in for the third, but if Marcus Mariota, let's say Jalen Hurts starts, plays 8 snaps, Marcus Mariota comes in, finishes the half. Maybe they give a couple looks to the other two quarterbacks on the roster, Book and McKee. We'll have to see how that one turns out.
Right now,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't think any of them are too interesting right now until we get more information on that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. This game starts 3 hours after the Jets-Panthers game, so hopefully we'll get some info. But since you're playing a lot of Chargers, we'll get to the Chargers game next. But since we're playing Chargers in our lineups, we're going to have roster spots, and so we are going to have the ability to swap out if something pops up that makes it a good swap. As for the running backs on this team, so we know that DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, and Kenneth Gainwell are the top 3 running backs. We'll have to see what their playing time plans for them, especially with Swift and Penny. I can't imagine they want to run them out that much in preseason. It's been reported that Kenneth Gainwell was getting the bulk of the work in training camp. I don't necessarily think that means he's going to end up being the RB1 or even the RB2. I'm pretty sure something like this happened last season where Kenny Gainwell got a lot of work in camp, and it just ended up being Miles Sanders all season. And so beyond those 3, Trey Sermon is one of the guys who was deemed intriguing player to watch in the preseason. So keep an eye on him. And Boston Scott is still on this team. He's still there. Just one thing I would note is he's kind of a veteran. And so even if he's playing, I can't imagine he sees enough snaps for us to be pretty interested in him. There's also another player on the roster, Kennedy Brooks, who is probably not going to make the roster. We'll see if he gets a couple snaps. But between him and Sermon, I'd have a little bit more confidence in Sermon. Just seems like he's the player more likely to actually possibly contribute to an NFL team this season. And so I think it makes sense to give him the work. But like I said, see if we get any word on Swift, Penny, and Gainwell playing, because that will affect who we're interested in from the running back here. And then, Smitty, your thoughts on these wide receivers for Philadelphia?
For wide receivers, we know A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Quez Watkins are considered their starters, so I would figure they're going to go as long as Hurts goes. And after that, let me see. Deon Cain, he was a DMP, so he's likely out. Ahmed Zaccheaus has stood out this summer. He's competing with Quez Watkins for the wide receiver 3 role. So I could see Zaccheaus getting some run. But they have a lot of receivers they could be running out there.
Yeah, they have 12 on the roster. We know, we assume that A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith probably won't play. Maybe if Jalen Hurts plays, they'll get the same, 8 snaps or 2 series, whatever it is with him. From the other players, Deon Cain, he didn't practice Thursday. He's probably not going to play today. But in 2022, the 2 leading receivers from these guys in the preseason, Cain was one of them. He played 56% of snaps. And then Lenoir last season played 44% of snaps. And they were 3rd, 4th team wide receivers. And so the guys that we're looking at who could possibly do that today are Cain, Joseph Ngata, Greg Ward, Devin Allen, Jaden Hasselwood. I think our preference here, or the guy that we're most interested in, is Joseph Ngata. Smitty, you got anything on these guys?
No, I do think Ngata's interesting.
Yeah, he got some work with the first team on Thursday, and so it seems like they do want to give him a look, see what they have with him. If he's the guy who fills that role as that, that third unit wide receiver and gets the run, then that looks pretty good. And then just look out for the news on Cain. Like I said, he didn't practice on Thursday. That was only 2 days ago, so he's likely not playing. But if he does play, then he's a candidate to get snaps. Not necessarily that we're very interested in playing him for fantasy, but it's just going to cut into somebody else's, possible work. But I think Ngannou's the guy that we're interested in here. As for tight end for the Eagles, Dallas Goedert, obviously tight end 1. We'll have to see what they do. We're not really expecting him to play today, but again, we're not expecting any of the veterans to play, so we'll have to see. Stolen Calcaterra are the guys are the guys who would probably fill in, and then they also have Tyree Jackson, so it's a little bit of a muddied up tight end room here. We'll have to see if we're interested in any tight ends from the Eagles.
I think Tyree Jackson's probably the main name that interests me, just because he's a pretty good pass catcher.
I like that. Tyree Jackson. Apparently, so I think he was having a pretty strong start to camp and then just stopped, I guess. But probably still going to throw him out there and see what he has. But yeah, I think Tyree Jackson is probably the interesting guy from this tight end room that we'd be interested in. Moving on to Baltimore. So Baltimore is interesting. Lamar Jackson's not playing, and they have one of the better quarterbacks that's playing today, Tyler Huntley. We saw him fill in for Lamar Jackson the past couple of seasons. He's looked pretty good. Him and Josh Johnson are the 2 quarterbacks to watch, so we're probably expecting those 2 to get most of the work. In 2022, the QB2, which was still Huntley, he played half the snaps, and then the third stringer played 40%. And then they gave the last couple of series to the 4th string quarterback. And so that's the players we're expecting to play today: Tyler Huntley and Josh Johnson to fill in those roles. Huntley obviously expected to start. Just double check.
Yep.
Yeah, so we have Huntley. We don't necessarily have him as a low risk. We have him as a high risk player, but if we're expecting him to play a half, he's one of the guys that I'm interested in getting to a quarterback today in my lineups. We've seen him do well, and it's good. He's a good play, I think.
Yeah, I think that all the Ravens quarterbacks, they're all mobile. So just having that mobile quarterback just adds that floor to your lineup that you're looking for.
Especially if we're not expecting any quarterback to really get more than 2 quarters, then just having that rushing upside is so valuable today. So that's what we want to target. Huntley, again, probably high risk player, but someone that I'm going to be comfortable getting to in my lineups today. As for the receivers next to these guys, I can't imagine that Bateman and OBJ play. Look out for news closer to this game starting. Other veterans expected to sit: Aguilar and Devin Duvernay. Aguilar's looked good in camp, but if he's not playing, it doesn't really matter. Zay Flowers is a presumed starter for this team for the season. He could sit, but maybe he'll get a few reps. So, just see if he's dressed before the game starts. The players who are behind them that we're interested in looking at: Tariq Black, James Prochet, Laquan Treadwell, Tylan Wallace. Players to watch, like Treadwell has looked good in camp. Tariq Black looked great in camp. All these guys have had pretty strong practices. And so I think we can pair them up with Huntley if we're going that route. Pair up one of these guys, and it sounds pretty good. Anything more? Yeah, I think we're going to have Laquan Treadwell and Tylan Wallace as 2 of the guys that we're most interested in from the Ravens, 2 guys that we have confidence that they're going to play. As for the running back position, J.K. Dobbins is not playing. Gus Edwards is the RB1 with Dobbins out. Don't think he's expected to play either, but we'll have to see. And so guys who are the next running backs up on the roster. I started laughing because I saw Melvin Gordon's name.
Gordon.
Yeah, Melvin Gordon is the next running back up on this roster. And so, we'll see what they do with Melvin Gordon. I can't imagine they run him out very much. They don't really need to look at him. He's not very good at football relative to his peers. And so the other running backs who we do want to, who we're kind of interested in: Keaton Mitchell is probably the main one, and then Justice Hill is listed as the RB3 on their unofficial depth chart. And so those are two guys that we probably want to look at today, but not priorities. I think Keaton Mitchell is the guy that we're going to be most interested in from Baltimore as a high-risk play. From the running back position anyway. As for the tight ends, if Isaiah Likely plays football today, he's the best tight end on the slate. He should probably, I don't know, do you think if Isaiah Likely starts that he actually plays much or just sees a series or two and then sits?
If they start him, I think he'll probably run as long as Huntley's out there. It's kind of my read on it. But I mean, last year they let him play a lot. He's got the tight end 2 locked down, so they don't really need to see a whole lot. I think it's just getting reps. But even if he was to play a quarter, I think he could outdo probably every tight end on this slate.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like tight end position, we really only need a couple of good catches, maybe a good run or two to get these guys in the optimal lineup. You know, if you get a touchdown from any tight end today, then they're probably the best tight end on the slate. So the other guys behind him, we have Charlie Kolar, Travis Vokalek. They're likely to get some run here. They're not going to run likely. Excuse me. They're not going to run likely out there that much. And so Kolar and Vokalek are two tight ends that we can get to here. We're likely to see some playing time. I think we like Kolar over Vokalek, but we are comfortable getting to either of them.
Vokalek is not really a pass catcher. He's from Nebraska, but anyways, he's not really a pass catcher, so I think I'm with that too. I prefer Kolar.
Yeah, I think that's the direction that I'm probably going to go today as well. Going to get there a bit. And then moving on to the last game, the Chargers and the Rams. This game is the most interesting to me. The Rams are probably not going to play their starters. They don't really do that. Sometimes they don't even play their backups. And so the Rams are a team that we really want to get some info on before. I mean, that game starts in what? It's 11:40 in LA right now. The game starts in over 6 hours. So, you know, I've been saying it all show. We're going to have Chargers in our lineups. If you have a couple Rams, that's great. We can late swap to the other teams if necessary. But Chargers also aren't going to play their starters. And so the two quarterbacks that we're most interested, I think, in this slate, we have Stick and Max Duggan. Smitty, you have something on them?
No, I think Duggan has he's mobile, so that helps with him. And Stick's a solid option as well. I was trying to pull this up.
Yeah, Glenn Flanagan, I didn't miss your question. I was just waiting until we got to the Chargers game to talk about it. Any particular reason that we like Stick more than Duggan? I mean, if you're looking at our plug, we have Stick and Duggan listed as the two top quarterbacks. And if they're 1 and 2, I wouldn't pay too much attention to the order they're in. Maybe it's just a slight preference.
Another answer to that is we have Stick as the QB2, which means he's going to be running with better offensive players more than likely.
There you go. And so, so that's it right there. You know, it doesn't take much to swing the favor into one of these guys, and for Stick, that's enough.
Yeah, they're both good plays.
We're expecting them each to play about a half. As for the wide receivers to pair them up with, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are not going to play. Jalen Guyton, he is on the physically unable to perform list. He's out. Joshua Palmer got hurt on Thursday. I haven't heard word on how severe that is, but it's unlikely that he's playing. Two more guys, Darius Shepard and John Hightower. They did not practice at the last practice. They're likely out. And so there's only 6 receivers who are available to play today. That's the reason why we're the most interested in Chargers. It's just the other teams. We don't have that much confidence in who's going to play, and there's so many guys who can get the snaps, where the Chargers, there's only 6 available guys. And the last 2 preseason week ones, 4 guys got 50% plus of the snap count, the second and third team guys mostly. And so the guys we're expecting that can be there today, Quentin Johnson, Darius Davis, Keelan Doss, 3 of the guys that we are most interested in today. Smitty, anything on these guys?
Darius Davis, he's a round 4 pick, so it's someone they want to get work to. He's kind of a smaller receiver. He's more of a deep threat. And then when it comes to Keelan Doss, he's kind of a bigger target, more of the red zone threat. So they're both good options. You can't really go wrong with either. But the big playability, I'd lean with Darius Davis.
Yeah, I think I agree. And those two are going to be two of our top wide receiver plays overall today, along with Quentin Johnson. But we'll have to see. I mean, I guess we just have to see if he's playing. If we get any word on how many snaps he's going to play, it's the last game. So just watch out for news. Like, I'd be interested in Quentin Johnson, but I mean, this guy could be a stud. It's a little weird since they're so short on wide receivers. Maybe he gets a little bit of extra run, but I think I'm still going to prefer to get to the other guys, Darius Davis and Keelan Doss. But I'll probably mix in Quentin Johnson in a couple lineups.
I think he's pretty good in high risk. I think he's done enough. I think they've seen enough, but I mean, like you said, they're shorthanded, so he might get some reps.
Yeah, I like that. I think we're going to consider Darius Davis and Keelan Doss low risk plays, while Quentin Johnson is a high risk. And like we said, it only takes one touchdown to get these guys in the optimal lineup. So looking at the tight end position, Gerald Everett's not going to play today. He never does in preseason anyway. They have 5 other tight ends on the roster. We don't have that much confidence in who's going to play after them. Second tight end listed, Donald Parham Jr., Trey McKitty after him, and then Stone Smart. No tight end played more than half in the last couple of week ones for these guys. And so do we have them as a play? So we don't have any of these guys as a top play. I think, well, with tight end, honestly, just keep it simple. Just play the guys who we recommend. We'll go over it again at the end, but we have Blakely and Kolar as probably our 2 favorite tight end plays today. I don't think we have to get cute there. I think we can just play those guys and be pretty comfortable, have that roster spot locked down. Just make sure. And then looking at the running backs, they have 5 on the roster. Austin Eckler is obviously not playing today. Yeah, no other running back is really going to get more than a half. Joshua Kelly's kind of a vet, so I'd be kind of surprised if he even got a full half. Beyond him, Isaiah Spiller could be a good candidate to get some of the work. But let's see who's starting. I think I would expect Isaiah Spiller to start, actually, just looking at who they have on this team. Makes the most sense, but like I said, we'll have to look out for some news before. I'm just seeing if they have somebody else. Any more thoughts on our favorite team today, the Chargers, before we move on to the Rams?
No. I think Spiller and Kelly, I think they've seen enough from Kelly. I think it's going to be more of Spiller, Roundtree, Dotson in that area, but I think just keeping those roster spots, we might get news that someone's sitting or someone's going to be getting more reps. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I agree. And so, I mean, preseason, the whole game is just, if you're in our Discord, then we're pretty good about getting those news notes out there. And so if you haven't joined the Discord yet, there's instructions in the description below. But the Discord is the best place for, just making sure that you are aware of the late breaking news, because, one piece of late breaking news might be enough to win the whole slate. So, yep. Chuck, love the library setup today. Thanks. Yeah, I'm over at my sister's house. Thought this was a pretty good background compared to the super bright windows that I'm usually in front of. But moving on to the last team, the Rams, they're also a team that we're going to be interested in. I already said that the starters and probably a lot of the second team players aren't going to be playing. Let's see this here. So they've had 1 to 2 quarterbacks play in preseason week 1 previously. There's 3 guys behind Matt Stafford right now: Stetson Bennett, Brett Ripon, and Dresser Wynn. Ripon is actually expected to start. Bennett, the player to watch, he has a lot of experience. I'll say that. Stetson Bennett, he's been in high level football programs for a while, and so between these guys, Ripon and Bennett, do you have a preference?
I would prefer Bennett just because I think he's a better player, but overall, I don't see a whole lot of difference in between them.
Yeah, I think I was actually a little bit surprised that they weren't just going to give the start to Bennett and
Yeah, I was too.
see how it goes. So, yeah, see if we get news on how many snaps, but I think I'm more comfortable going Bennett as well. And then the other guy, to disrespect, Dresser Wynn, clear fourth quarterback, and so probably not playable for DFS purposes. Just a matter of how many snaps he gets, taking away from Bennett and Ripon. Wide receivers, they actually go pretty heavy on their wide receivers, so we're pretty interested in these guys. They only played 4 in preseason week 1 last year and then 6 in 2021. And so they have 12 on the roster, a few guys that we know aren't going to play. Cooper Kupp is definitely not playing. Van Jefferson and Ben Skoranek we think are unlikely to play. The vets, if they're going to keep up their tradition of not playing guys who are going to play football this season, then those two would be on the bench. And then some other guys, Tutu Atwell, I guess he's a veteran. He's probably not going to play. Demarcus Robinson, definitely a veteran, not going to play. And Puka Nakua, this guy comes up, if you've been drafting best ball and paying attention to best ball content, this guy's been coming up a bunch. Do you have any thoughts on this situation?
No, I think if he plays, he's a solid play, but I think he's a receiver that they've seen enough from. I don't know with how they are with their starters. I just don't think he's going to get the run needed, or he might even be a rest candidate here.
Yeah, they have their starting wide receivers listed as Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and Tutu Atwell, with Puka Nakua, Demarcus Robinson, and Ben Skoranek in the second team. And so Skoranek and Robinson, they're vets. I think they're very unlikely to play. But Puka Nakua, I mean, I don't see why they would sit him, but give him a series or two. But we'll have to see if he's dressed before that game starts. Beyond them, they have 3 guys that some of these beats are a little bit excited about: Lance McCutcheon, Austin Trammell, and Xavier Smith listed as 3rd and 4th string guys. And because we know that they're going to be pretty tight with the receivers they play, they're not going to play the top guys. These guys become pretty good plays, I think. McCutcheon, Trammell, and Smith. Look up here.
I know last year we had McCutcheon and Trammell were in the same situation. They produced pretty much every time they were on the slate. So.
Yeah, we actually have all 3 of these guys as some of our top plays. Lance McCutcheon is our top receiver on the slate. And so, there's not I don't want to say top option, but he is among the top options on the slate, Lance McCutcheon. And so, Xfinity just said he did well last preseason. We're going to look to go right back to him here, but also mix in the other Rams guys as well, yep. Trammell and Smith. Looking at the running backs for the Rams, no one had seen more than 50% of the snaps in each of the last 2 seasons, so we're not expecting that to happen here. They only have 5 on the roster. Cam Akers and Kieran Williams are the 2 guys. I mean, that's the expected RB1, RB2. If you remember, Kieran Williams got hurt on the first snap of the NFL season last year, was out for the year. But he's back. He's pretty good. If you're drafting best ball teams, I think he's an awesome last round dart throw. Backing up Cam Akers, you never know what's going to happen. But the other guys on the roster, Zach Evans, Royce Freeman, and Ronnie Rivers. Again, kind of going along with that vet thing. I like Royce Freeman. He's probably fighting to make the roster, but I can't imagine that they're going to give him many snaps. And so I'd expect the bulk of the work to go to Ronnie Rivers and Zach Evans. Though someone did say that Freeman was expected to get some work, but it doesn't really make sense to me. So I'm not sure that I would go there. I think I would target Zach Evans, and then I'm going to take some shots on Ronnie Rivers as well.
I think Zach Evans is a pretty good play. He's a round 6 pick this year, so they've used a little bit of capital on him. I think they're going to want to get some film on him.
Yeah, see if he's listed as a 4th string right now with Royce Freeman behind Ronnie Rivers. And so I think one of the debates was, is Zach Evans going to compete with Kieran Williams to be the RB2? And at this point, the answer is no. But maybe they want to give him a look tonight and see what they have. I think that makes the most sense. So Zach Evans is probably one of my favorite running backs on the slate, if not my favorite. Just to wrap it up, looking at the tight ends on the Rams. Sorry, guys. I know we went a little bit over the half hour, but we're getting some good preseason information. So none of the tight ends played more than 33% of the snaps last season, and they only had 4. Now they have many more than 4. Tyler Higbee's not going to play. Bryson Hopkins, maybe. Hunter Long, maybe. This collection of 4 gentlemen down on the 4th string over here, maybe. So I think the answer here is just we're not really confident in any of the tight ends enough to play them for DFS purposes. So I'd probably just avoid it and stick to players like Zach Evans and Ronnie Rivers at the running back position. And then the wide receivers that we discussed, Lance McCutcheon, Austin Trammell, and Xavier Smith, I think, are the 3 guys that we want to look at. So this game is probably going to be the chalk game, as it should be. It's just that we have the most confidence in these players to get snaps over the players on the other teams. And so, I don't think we overthink it here. I think you probably want definitely at least one player from this game, if not one player from each team. Anything else on that, Smitty, before we get out of here?
No, I got nothing to add on that.
So I just wanted to recap our best plays. I'm going to go position by position here. So quarterback, we like both of the Chargers quarterbacks, Stick and Dugan. And Glenn Flanagan let us know in the chat that just know Dugan uses his legs. And hey, we love QB rushing upside. That's probably the key to winning these slates. Just rip off one rushing touchdown, and it's pretty good fantasy score for that. Beyond them, I think I'm going to take some shots on Matt Corral and Tyler Huntley. If Zach Wilson gets a full half today, he's going to be pretty interesting. We'll have to see about that. I think he does because they only have 2 guys on the roster now. And with Zach Wilson, I really like pairing him with Brownlee. Looking at the running backs, favorite running backs, Zach Evans and Chuba Hubbard. If you're looking for a little bit more high risk, Blackshear is a pass catching back. If you want to fade Hubbard, I think he's probably going to be one of the more popular running backs. So Blackshear's pretty good. Contrarian, I don't know if he'll necessarily be contrarian. I guess he's more of a pivot. He's going to look pretty good there. Any running backs you like that I didn't talk about?
I think Deuce Vaughn's interesting.
Yes, Deuce Vaughn. Forgot about him. Yes, yeah. He they're going to give him a look. He had a couple highlights in practice. All he has to do is rip one off, and he's in there. So those. Mm-hmm.
And both Philly guys, Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon.
Yeah, those guys are going to be 2 of our top plays as well. Looking at the receivers, honestly, you should probably have at least 1 Chargers receiver in your lineups, I think. It's probably okay to play 2 and then mix in a Ram or 2. We have Joseph Ngata on Philadelphia. We have a few Baltimore guys that we're going to be interested in, Treadwell, Wallace, and Prochet. So I would mix it up with those guys if you want a little bit higher risk. You can look to the Jaguar starters. I'm not sure I'm going to really get there. I haven't been playing starters, but there's something about these guys are coming in solo owned. Like the starters last night, no one played George Pickens. No one played blanking on whoever the other starter that had a decent score. But like 60% of the field played Jamison Williams. And so if one of these guys somehow emerges as chalk, they're going to be a good play. That's why they're chalk. But I just think that if you're playing in larger field tournaments, that you can look to some of the other starters and just hope that one of them catches a touchdown.
Even like DJ Moore, for instance, on the early slate, he was 3%, scored a touchdown.
Yeah, ripped off a 67-yard touchdown. Yeah. It's like it only takes 1 snap to be in the optimal lineup. And granted, DJ Moore is top receiver in the NFL. If you've been watching our best ball streams, you know he's my favorite guy. But yeah, if you're playing the low risk, you can still play the starters. I mean, they're expected to play. They're the best football players available today. And so you can brick on like 2 to 3 positions and still win a tournament. And so just play the guys that we're confident are going to be on the field. And just to wrap it up at tight end, Isaiah Likely is probably the top option. It's just, even if he only gets a quarter, he's probably the best tight end playing today. Evan Ingram as well. He's also going to be a good option, but we like the Baltimore tight ends over here. And we didn't talk about defense that much. Apologize for that. But the defenses that we're interested in the most are the Rams, Jets, and Baltimore. You have anything on the defenses, Smitty?
No, I think what you said, how we have it listed, is pretty good.
Yeah, we have those are probably just the top three defenses. I mentioned the Ravens are the best preseason team of all time. If it's going to keep up, who knows?
They're also the biggest favorite, so I think that's pretty important.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a big fan of that. So I'm probably, I mean, defense is defense, but you really just want the defense to catch the touchdown. If no one, not catch the touchdown, that scores a touchdown. But if no defense scores a touchdown, then I'm probably just going to stick with Baltimore and possibly the Jets. But I think Baltimore is probably my favorite defense today. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Like I said, look in the description below if you want information on joining the Discord. We have some pretty active discussions in there every day. If you have any questions, you can come in there and ask us in there, and someone knowledgeable will give you a good answer, I hope. And any updates will also be posted in Discord. So appreciate everybody watching today. This was fun. Smitty, any final words?
Stack the late game.
Yep, stack the late game. It's keys to the slate. So appreciate you guys watching. Thank you.